Hello and welcome to today's panel discussion about the role of the learning designer, the learning technologist and the media coordinator and their support for academics in Australian higher education institutions. My name is Liisa Uusimäki. I am a visiting scholar from the University of Gothenburg or Göteborgs universitet in Sweden. And I want to take this opportunity to begin today with respectfully acknowledge the Wurundjeri people and the Kulin Nation, who are the traditional owners of the land on which Swinburne's Australian campuses are located in Melbourne's East and Outer East, and pay our respect to their elders, past, present, and emerging. So the purpose of my visit to Swinburne University of Technology is to further develop my understanding how Australian universities are organised to support new ways of technology in teaching and learning. In contrast to Sweden, it is Australia's long history of distance education that has resulted in the solid organisation of online teaching and learning found across all universities. The infrastructure, IT support, as well as the teaching and learning support offered to academics by the learning designer. So today, I want to welcome a team from Swinburne University's Learning Transformation Unit. Firstly, Antoinette
Gwasira,
thank you.
That's all right.
Who is the manager of learning design. Then we have Natashas Hobbs, or Tash, who has worked as a learning designer for the past 3 years.
Hello, thank you.
And then we have on my left, David Yammouni, who is a learning technologist and also in charge of media coordination. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think I just love the idea of learning design and learning designers' work. And particularly, I want to hear a little bit more about the Learning Transformation Unit. I understand it is an own apartment. Maybe you can share some of what does the Learning
Transformations Unit do?
That's right.
That's all right. Thanks, Liisa, for having us. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the Learning Transformations Unit. We are not technically a department, if you think about it. A department is normally part of a faculty or a school. We're actually a service. We provide a service for the institution. We are part of the EEE portfolio. That's an acronym. That is the Swinburne way. And EEE is education, experience, and employability. We are one of 5 services as part of that, and the Learning Transformations Unit is one of the only ones that actually supports staff. So really our mandate is to support teachers and academic staff in terms of not only creating, but also designing really great, impactful learning experiences for our students through great teaching practice. And we achieve this through the amazing professional learning opportunities that we have. We have workshops and training sessions that we run. We ensure that we have everything sort of evidence-based around scholarship of teaching and learning. We have teaching events such as seminars. We have an annual learning and teaching conference as well. So there are quite a number of events that we have, but we also, and this is part of where David's team comes into it, we manage the learning technology ecosystem of the institution as well. So the Learning Transformations Unit is made of quite a few teams. And so there's a learning technologist team that David is a part of. We have the learning design team that I lead, and Tash is one of the learning designers within that team. We also have an academic team that sort of looks and takes care of the scholarship of teaching and learning. But as part of that as well, we support some key strategic priorities for the institution. And the 2 major ones that currently are the digital blended learning as well as digital literacies program. And so we have different people who come in and out to support those. In particular for blended learning, there's a separate team of learning experience designers who support that as well. But the teams work very closely and collaboratively together to ensure that we actually achieve the mandate of the Learning Transformations Unit.
Beautiful. And so and I was just going to ask you before that who makes the decision and what determines the support that is offered to lectures from LTU unit, and how is the learning organized, face-to-face or online?
So the big boss is our DVC of the Triple E portfolio, and that's Professor Sarah Madison, and so our director of the Learning Transformations Unit, very newly appointed director, that's Associate Professor Lou Mann, reports directly to her, and so she makes those specific decisions. Please just repeat your second question.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they are the ones who make the decision, but are they also the ones who then decide what is needed? And because you also talk about the scholarship of teaching and learning, and you have an academic team.
Yes, we do.
And so I'm curious. So when you basically mentioned that, I thought, okay, so that means that they are support people for learning designers in what are we going to be focusing on. But I just was curious that who decides that, okay, we're going to be focusing on blended learning.
Well, to be honest, that is not really. We do, as experts in the field, speak to the decisions that are made, but it's really coming as a strategic priority from the university. They decide exactly what the focus is going to be in terms of what are the strategic priorities, and then our team basically supports what comes down from them. So in terms of what's required, it's really just seeing what the needs are currently, not only in Swinburne University, but the rest of the country as well, and determining that, blended learning is the way that we're going. And obviously a little bit later, we'll talk about something like high flex and hybrid. That's also an advancement that's happening within our field. And it's only right that we're obviously supporting those major advancements within our field. So it certainly has outside forces, and we come together and we ensure that we actually have the expertise and the people who can actually support those specific strategic priorities. So those decisions are kind of made outside of the unit, but we do certainly inform what's happening through our own experience and our expertise as well.
And so it's very much about the real life. So there's that connection. And so when we talk about job readiness of students and our, particularly academics, that's one of our roles is to make sure that we're with the times.
Indeed.
And of course, fabulous. Thank you for sharing that with us. And of course, and we're going to come back to some of the topics or that you brought up there, but I think it's really important to understand the role of the learning designer. Do you want to start and then we go to Tash?
Sure.
Yeah?
In terms of my own background, I can just give a quick history. So I consider myself a teacher by profession. So I am educated as a teacher. I taught in a middle and a high school before making the decision to pursue my postgraduate studies. And when I sort of did my investigations and trying to find out what's available to specialize in, I came across this very novel idea. Back in the day, it was called computer integrated education.
Yes.
That shows my age. It has since become technology enhanced learning. And so I was just really fascinated about this area. I was like, oh, okay. It just seemed to me it opens up so many more opportunities. Whereas when I was a teacher, I had a class of about 30 students. It's very limited to the 4 walls that I have the students within. But when you talk about computer integrated education, it just opens up the world so much more. And I was just drawn to that. And so I studied that. I did my postgraduate studies around that. And my first job after that was as a curriculum development practitioner. And there, really, I started to work with academic staff within higher education context. And really, it was just about supporting staff to realize and fulfill their potential already as is. I mean, they are the subject matter experts, but we are sort of the teaching and learning experts and just supporting them to ensure that they're actually applying the principles that they're meant to. There's an assumption that, as a teacher, you're an expert in a particular area, you should be able to stand in front of a classroom and teach. But that's not true. Not everybody's a natural teacher. Not everybody knows the teaching and learning principles. And that's where my role comes into it. So I have that background of education, those fundamentals and foundations of learning and teaching. And I work with with experts within the field to ensure that they're able to relay and communicate and articulate what the subject's about in a way that is understandable for different students. So it's inclusive, it's accessible, and really we're just going back to the basics.
Yes.
And so we don't want academics to be, kind of the jack of all trades. They know everything, but really the role of the learning designer is just to step in.
Good.
Is to step in and then just say, this is my area of expertise. How can I support you? You're already doing this. How can we make that a little bit easier or better for you and for your students as well? So at the end of it, it's about the students. So we always just go back to about student-centered learning. What do you need to do to ensure that you actually design a course and teach in a way that really speaks to your students? And that's pretty much for me what a learning designer is. And obviously I've kind of moved across from curriculum development all the way to learning design, and now I manage a learning design team. But that's the core of it, working with staff, supporting them so that they can really fulfill their potential.
Wonderful.
No worries.
And just, when we talk about what you read, and you absolutely agree with you when we talk about academics, and we are experts in our areas,
yes,
but we may not have the pedagogical skills.
That's right.
Or the ideas,
yes,
and that's where you come in.
That's right.
Is that correct?
That's exactly right.
Natasha, or Tash, can you tell us about your how you see the role of the learning designer, and a little bit about your background?
Okay. Well, Antoinette covered really the role of a learning designer so beautifully just then. But maybe if I go through what I do in my day-to-day, so if I walk you through the day of a learning designer, and I'll think about some of the things that I've done in the last few days. So we hold workshops for teaching staff to come and learn in different skills in Canvas, in authentic learning, and also in universal design for learning and those sorts of things, and enhancing content basically for learning. Bit about my background. I came from a teaching background as well. I taught for 10 years in higher ed at a different institute before I made the transition to learning design. I was at a bit of a crossroads because I was teaching in higher ed with a master's and looking at perhaps pursuing a PhD to really become or to pursue a career in teaching in higher ed, but someone said to me, have a look at learning design, and I thought that I didn't even really realise that role existed as a teacher. So that's I think that's interesting as well, that a lot of teachers don't realise that there are learning designers that can support their teaching in the ways that Antoinette said that we do.
And you studied for it?
Yes, I did. So I was actually the first cohort, I believe, that went through Deakin University, and I studied Digital Learning Leadership is the name of the course, a graduate certificate in Digital Learning Leadership. It does extend onto a master's as well, but I got so much out of actually studying what a learning designer does, and it's a really interesting space because there is a lot of conversations about what a learning designer is. You asked what a learning designer is. So learning designers work in so many different areas. So when I had a look at, are there going to be I'm going to study this, are there going to be jobs out there? There were jobs in hospitals, there were jobs in commercial enterprise learning design enterprises that work for universities. There are, we're in-house in a university. There are learning designers across government, and the names of what the role is different across all of those as well. So for instance, even with our team, there are learning designers and learning experience designers. There are instructional designers that are very similar to what we do. There is crossover and flexibility across all of those roles. So I feel like I know a bit about all of those things. We work together and kind of interchangeable.
Wow. It is more complex than I would even imagine.
Well, just yesterday, I filled out a survey on exactly that. Actually, there is a group of academics who are looking at what the role of a learning designer is and trying, getting all these learning designers to say what do they do in their everyday role. So my everyday role can consist of sitting in a drop-in where teachers can come with their, for personalised support, which is technical support, which we often speak, how are you using the technology as well as a learning designer? How is that implemented? Is that working for you? And so forth. And also having a look and sense checking instructions for teachers as well. What are their assessment instructions, and even providing guidance on the type of assessment and thinking about alternatives and digital assessments as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So over to David. Now, David, can you talk about your role as a learning technologist? I think it's really fascinating word, technologist. And I assume that is different from IT support.
Very much so. So for us, when we talk about a learning technologist, these are people that support the learning design team. So we work hand in hand and together often to work through how to use technology effectively in teaching. And for me in particular, one of the things that I believe a good learning technologist has as a skill, as a tool, is the ability to translate difficult technology and make it more human, so that as a teacher, they're not terrified by the technology. Because you were saying yourself in the discussions we've had, people are terrified of the technology. They say, why would I use this? I'm too busy teaching. If you can make the technology more approachable and support it in a way that's easy to use and can integrate with how they design and develop their teaching, the chances of success of using that technology increase. So we certainly, as a learning technologist, we do much more than IT. What IT do in terms of their support is what we call break fix. You've got a broken computer, they will fix it. But if you want to know how to use the computer, they won't help you because they're focused on the technology's function.
The black box.
Correct. Whereas for us, we show you how to use the black box and how to get the most out of it and how to use it appropriately, what the best practices are. We look at research from around the world and we take cues from our learning design colleagues and we support them with the technology. So we'll say to them, have you ever tried, people will come to us with a problem and they'll say, I want this. And we'll say, well, okay, have you tried this connected with this and this tool working with this tool? And they say, no, I never thought of that before. And so we provide a solution. So we're looking at the user perspective, whereas IT really looks at the technology itself. And that's the difference between the two.
Thank you, David. What a good answer.